Good morning, everyone. How jazzed are you to be talking about money today? Yeah, all right. We're on a tight schedule today, so we'll get right into it. I would love to have everyone just talk a little bit about yourselves and what you do. Let's start with Andy. You thought you could escape sitting at the end, but no, gonna go.
Is this on? Oh, it is. Hi, I'm Andy Wong. I work at CAA in the Media Finance Group. What do we do? We specialize in, packaging, selling, and independent film, right? We set up movies outside the traditional studio landscape, using our connections throughout the world in different various fields to put movies together like little puzzles. So, yeah, that's what I do.
Thanks, Andy. Jenny?
I'm Jenny Ju. I'm a casting director, primarily in film. I've worked on budgets as low as $600,000. That was for Greg Araki, up to 80, both studio and independent.
I'm Rahdi Taylor. I am a documentary film executive and executive producer. I've been working in documentary for about 30 years across development, finance in the non-recoupable or grant-making space, production, and artist development. And I'm currently at Concordia Studio, a company founded by Davis Guggenheim and Jonathan King to produce and finance fiction and nonfiction with the best creatives for all platforms.
I'm Ryan Broussard. I am VP of Sales and Production Incentives at Wrapbook. We are a startup that works in the payroll side of things, so getting people paid like yourselves, crew members, producers. We make sure you guys are getting paid correctly and accurately. We're doing that with a platform that's really giving back people their time and making it very easy. We're actually giving away an Apple Watch, by the way, so we have in your bags, we have a little thing you can scan and get that. I've worked with budgets large and small, helping them with their budgets. We can't do payroll if the movie doesn't get made, right? So as you mentioned, it's kind of like a puzzle. So I'm helping people put it together from a finance perspective, looking at their budgets, anything that they can do to get the movie made. I try to act on the front end to get those movies made and help them with that.
I don't know if it's on. It is. Okay. Hi, I'm Stephanie Meurer. I'm a producer. I work in TV, film, and documentary. And obviously, because of the climate right now, I've been doing more docs. I did the Selena Gomez, My Mind and Me for Apple Plus, amongst many other ones. And I help in a variety of levels, because every project is different. And, it takes a team to make it happen. So whether it's finding money or finding cast or finding out how to make the project happen, that's basically what I do. Much like many of you out here.
Perfect, thank you. I feel like it's important to set the tone in recognizing, where we're at as a community and an industry. As Maria alluded, it's important to be real. It's recognizing, so happy for the wins for the WGA and hopefully SAG-AFTRA to come. But it's also been a really, really challenging time for our industry. So as much as I hope that everyone can walk away and say, I know where to find my money, I think this conversation will be more about, what are the realities, what are potentially some of the new challenges that we're facing, and also recognizing that what we're discussing today may not totally hold true in 6 months as we're figuring out where we're at. So with that, I thought let's start with our producer, Stephanie, to give us a little feel of how she feels the landscape is looking right now with regards to taking out projects and financing.
I think right now, there's a lot of independents that obviously got signed on to the SAG interim agreement, which was very, very hard to get approved many times. You had to have all your copyright, all the usual paperwork that's not always done up front, you had to have done up front, and also agree to higher terms and conditions than the actual SAG agreement might do. But a lot of independents, I feel like, did that because they thought that they might lose their money. And it was very more smaller films that didn't necessarily have big actors, and a lot of people just felt like we got to get it done. At least this is a time we can get more actors as well. But other independents, I felt that were a little bit bigger are just like, oh, we don't want to box ourselves in or inherit stuff that might be complicated for potential sales, So now when I've talked with other financiers or other producers as well, everybody's just very cautious right now. It's like great that the Writers Guild has, figured everything out, and hopefully they'll pave the way for SAG in the upcoming week or so. But there's also, I feel like the industry is like bruised in a way, for lack of a better word. We've hemorrhaged money, personally, corporately, every way imaginable. And there's also a backlog of projects. It's not like, oh, everything, the world's gonna open up right now, People were committed to stuff, and they don't know if their projects are gonna happen, or there's projects that were gonna happen and got canceled. So I feel like everybody's being very, very cautious right now, and kind of just taking baby steps, because also a lot of executives that we've all dealt with also got laid off as well. So it's kind of just basically seeing what's happening now in like the next month, like what are the baby steps that everybody's taking forward, whether it's from the financing perspective or the cast, because even I know well-known actors that I've worked with, and they're like, I have nothing going on, don't know what's going on, it's shocking. These are people that are always busy, and I think it's just literally seeing what happens in the next month, and collectively what steps people are taking forward, because bigger projects had stages on hold, had cast on hold. So it's like a movie you might have committed to several years ago, and we're just trying to get all the money together, might change right now because you might not have locations, you might not have cast. So I think it's kind of seeing what bigger projects are still alive, like what the priorities are. And then if you have a project that's adaptable, whether it's cast, location, whatever the case might be, then you might get ahead of other projects, I think.
That's a good segue, I think, to talk to Jenny about casting, and how has it been working from your perspective of the industry, and how are you looking ahead?
Generally in casting, I think it's a golden age for underrepresented groups, which is great. I think a lot of executives, a lot of decision makers are not afraid to have uncomfortable conversations around race, around people with disabilities. These are conversations that didn't happen 10 years ago. And I think a lot of that is attributed to Black Lives Matter and those executives realizing, okay, this is a reckoning. I might not understand this, but rather than just say no, I'm gonna ask deeper questions and admit that I don't understand everything. So I think for underrepresented groups, it's a great time. I do think, like Stephanie said, it's gonna be a jockeying for position, especially for the biggest names. I was talking to an executive the other day about a project she has with Florence Pugh, and she's like, it's get in line. Like, she was already shooting something that was put on hold. She has her own production company. She's got 2 projects with hand-picked directors that she already wants. And I think for those kind of top of the A-list, that's what it's gonna be. And there's a little bit of a trickle-down effect with that. But I am hopeful, because I do think some of the projects that were in the pipeline are gonna continue to grow and get made.
Andy, what are you seeing from an agency perspective with regards to packaging? Again, now as we're kind of emerging from this, these past few months, is it working on existing projects, taking them back out again, getting in line? How are you feeling about everything?
Like from our perspective, a lot of the projects we get are from independent producers like all of you, but it's also, a lot of internal stuff as well. So like a lot of so-and-so wants to do this project, and that keeps coming back around 10 times. And you're just kind of like, there's a dearth of new material out there, which is why I think I'm excited for the next, month or so to see what comes back up in terms of new specs, new stories to tell, and, kind of packaging those up as we have, our next market AFM coming up. So we're about to kind of get into full gear launching projects at that market for international sales, and just kind of figuring out that piece of the puzzle as we put these movies together. But yeah, it's been interesting, for sure.
Are you seeing any trends right now with regards to what is getting people excited?
I think for us, right, I think we always think about that. We always think about what is working in the marketplace right now. And it's actually not the obvious stuff, right? There's always going to be certain action programmers starring Liam Neeson or Jerry Butler that are always going to work in the marketplace. There's always going to be a market for that. But what about the rest of the space, right? It's not necessarily having the biggest stars or the biggest names anymore. Like it isn't. What we're seeing get done are things that are original storytelling, right? It's stuff with a really great writer-director team that we've seen work. It may not be necessarily genre, but if you have a writer-director kind of situation with a package right now and having someone being able to just express that vision in rooms, we've seen a lot of success with that lately.
Continuing with you, Andy, I mean, I feel like, especially in the independent space, so much historically has been driven by equity financing, and with the theatrical landscape kind of being in its own upheaval and just, again, emerging from where we're at, do you still feel like there's a healthy equity market for independent films?
Yes, there's more money than ever. I think that's what we're seeing. Like in our tracking and in our process, we've seen, a new financier pop up every 5 minutes, right? How long they stay around, that's another story, right? But I think like there are new people popping up, and I think it just speaks to a larger economic trend in the world, right? I think most people are usually known for doing tech investments, stock investments, stuff like that. But I think those markets are not as stable or lucrative anymore, and I think people are wanting something new. So now they're thinking about, films, art, stuff like that is non-traditional and alternative. So we see people kind of coming out of the woodwork and, wanting to put their money where their mouth is and be involved in the entertainment business. But, that offers new opportunity, but also offers a lot of hand-holding and guiding those investors because we would like them to stick around for at least a year. So
That'd be good, but that's optimistic
Yeah.
that there's new money in what we do.
Yeah.
Ryan, from your perspective of state incentives, I mean, we always want to maximize as much soft money as we can get. How are we doing domestically? How are the different state incentives? Where is everyone running to?
Yeah, we just got out of a legislative session that was really busy, which is surprising, right? With everything going on in the world and just the state of things, you're surprised that a lot of the states that did actually fund their tax incentive program for movies did. A lot of these states put a lot of money towards it, not just California, which did up their program, and New York, which significantly upped their program, but also people like West Virginia and Arizona and Illinois just changed their program for the better. And Missouri now has a program. They never had a state program before. They had Kansas City, but now they have a very lucrative program. And I think they see what the potential of a movie can bring to an area, the economic impact. And I always say it's like dropping an economic bomb in a state if you can do that. So that's a big part of financing, and what I help filmmakers do is navigate the states, figure out where's the best place to go. Maybe it's international, maybe it's domestically. I think domestically we're in a good place, but it has become more expensive to film domestically, not only because of the renegotiations of certain union contracts and then more's to come, but it's just in Canada and other international areas there just seems to be more of a return. There's usually federal programs and local programs that they can combine. So I wouldn't call it runaway production like it was 20 years ago with Canada, but domestically we're certainly trying to compete. There's a lot of new stuff happening and a lot of local incentives happening. So we want to keep it here in the States, and they're trying to keep it here in the States, but it's just a matter of can you get it done,
That's definitely great that there are more states embracing this model, although I think one of the challenges as well we have to recognize is cash flowing these incentives and bank rates and borrowing, which is
Yep.
not in our favor, right, from a year or so ago. I don't know that many independent filmmakers think of like, oh my God, I've got state incentives, but who's going to cash flow it and at what rate and how to pay that back?
Yeah, we work with, one of the things I do on the front end is, I do work for a payroll company, but as I mentioned, we need the movie to get made. So I work on the front end, people send me budgets, and I do this for free, by the way, where I'll look at your budget, try to figure out where you should go, help you navigate that area, connect you with financiers or brokers or auditors to help you navigate this space. And, the way that things have moved from a financing perspective has been very slow, but the things that are getting financed against these tax incentives are things that I've never seen before. They used to be these shows where it was a $4 million, $5 million budget, and 3.5 million of it was going to like Nicolas Cage or Gerard Butler or one of these types of independents. And now I'm seeing the budgets we have, and actually a couple projects we're working on right now, the above the line is much smaller. And it's these unknowns, and it's the story is not your traditional thing. It's something very unique or to catered to a particular group. And it's very interesting to see that shift happen.
Continuing with the packaging aspect, Jenny, I wanted to go to you because casting also is a huge part of putting together a film and trying to get the financing. Can you talk a little bit about when best it is to bring someone like you on board, and how that collaboration process works, and should they be aiming for the stars? Should they be aiming for new discoveries? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think increasingly, I've been in casting for 20 years, and in the last, I would say, like 5 to 10, it's become increasingly important if you're going to go after a name to finance a movie in any budget. So like a name that greenlights a $2.5 million budget. It's really important to have a producer who has worked in that budget space, or at least in the genre, who's made a movie in that space before. And it's also really important to have a sales company attached, because a lot of agents are like, well, if you're going to send me this script for my client and then they love it and it never gets made, she's going to be attached to it for 5 years. Like, we don't want that. So that has become the new normal, is to have those pieces in place. And guaranteed, like, those agents are going to call up XYZ and be like, hey, are you going to bankroll this? Like, is this real? Because they're trying to protect their client and their client's time and energy. So I've noticed that for sure. Having an experienced producer, I know a lot of you filmmakers don't want to hear that because you just want to go right into attaching a lead, but it's becoming really, really crucial.
I want to pivot a little bit and talk about nonfiction. Fiction films, I feel like there's so many elements, and at least for fiction or nonfiction filmmakers, there might be a way to kind of start the process earlier. But I want to hear from you, Rahdi, to talk about how are you feeling about the state of nonfiction films with regards to financing. Is it still the golden age of documentaries, or have we moved beyond it and it's just hard everywhere?
I mean, nonfiction, has been a more volatile financial ecosystem than fiction for a while. It's been going strong as a creative art form, but it has changed models a lot over the last 10 to 15 to 20 years, from a broadcast ecosystem domestically to more of an international co-production model, always mixed with soft money. Then equity started coming into the nonfiction space in a way that it hadn't before. And then, of course, the whole streaming thing coming in and shifting people from international co-pros to holding everything in a domestic sale, to holding everything for an the all rights big buy, and we're seeing that we're then facing the same challenges that everybody else is facing. So you might think that the environment that fiction filmmakers are in right now, that docs are sort of exempt from that, especially in the indie space. I would say that we are still really feeling not just the kind of the impacts of the strikes, everything that happened, but also really like the things that catalyze or call for those unionization movements. Because basically, in response to corporate consolidation, in response to downward pressure, in response to how as the companies kind of eat each other and just want one big buy, how does that cut to, and collapse windows so that they can't make their money that way? Then they want one big buy. They don't want, 20 smaller films that really do serve different hungry audiences and viewerships and kind of generate interest, right? I felt like there was a moment when I saw, you could go to all these, started being able to go to all these free like jazz concerts and stuff like that, right? Where a music industry realized, oh no, we've got to feed an audience, because this audience is going to die out, basically. So it's like all this free stuff. So, we have to also, hopefully they can see, smaller buys can generate audiences. But even with documentary where, the amount to produce and finance a documentary, obviously there's a range, but, you would think it's a really strong economic model, from how much it costs to produce or finance versus how much they can make off of it or how much it costs them to buy. But the nonfiction ecosystem is really also feeling that downward pressure too.
From a funding standpoint, then, how much of your energy is focused on kind of like those big projects that can be bought for worldwide everything and service that big audience, and how much of your energy is focused on those smaller films that can service the smaller audiences that you're talking about? That also, cultivating audiences is so important right now, I think, in order to keep our business going.
Definitely always having that conversation with filmmakers and film teams in terms of, and trying to have those conversations as early as possible, of course, in terms of, what is this project? Is it something, for a super indie space? Is it something for, production and finance companies and with, some equity money? Is it the kind of thing that can go straight to, pre-sell to an end buyer? That all the buyers say they want the 3 Cs, celebrities, cults, and crime. Wonderful. And really, or is it even like adjacent to those things? Can we package it adjacent to those things? So really trying to have a strategy, a financial strategy that matches the content, because the only thing that pains me is when a filmmaker, is so frustrated. I've said this before, trying to get a cheeseburger at Jamba Juice, and just like, why can't, it's like, no, let's go over here. So just trying to think early about what that strategy is.
Great, thank you. Oh my gosh, time is flying. Okay, so really quickly from everyone, I'm curious if one of our wonderful audience members or filmmakers wanted to reach out to you about a project. Can you talk to me, just share real quickly, what stands out to you most about a pitch or a project that would attract you to want to work on it? I'm going to start with Stephanie.
I think it's having, even if you're not super experienced in like making a production, it's just showing that you've put the effort in to figure out and be able to speak to what you don't know, you know what I mean? And just not like, oh, I wrote a script here, it's amazing. It's like, but well, how's it gonna stand out? What's the homework you've done? Are there other films similar to this? What makes your project unique? Because I've read scripts before and I'm like, wait, I've seen this 50 million times, And just hearing about like what makes it different, what are outside of the box ideas you might have towards realizing your project, you know what I mean? Because it takes a village to make a movie, and sometimes I think people forget that, and it's sometimes the filmmaking teams themselves that have had such amazing ideas where it's like, I found this guy, even though our movie's covered full of visual effects, he lives in a van down by the river and can get it done for no money, and I wouldn't know about that person, And I think that's what it is, because I've seen projects before from first-time filmmakers where it could read on the page like, this could be $100 million. You've never done this before. How would you do it? You know what I mean? And I think that's a huge part of it, is being able to speak to what you can't and can't do. You know what I mean? To be able to inspire that confidence, you know what I mean? And realize, like, I can do this project, I think that's an important thing for me to hear,
Thank you.
I think for me, it's more of a matter of the budget and where it's at, and if it looks real or not. A lot of times, creatives and first-time filmmakers will say like, oh yeah, I think I can make this for $5 million or whatever it might be, and that $5 million has no information behind it. It's not built in a budgeting software. It just doesn't look accurate. So to Stephanie's point, I think a big thing that I try to get out of people when they reach out to me pretty early on is like, who are you working with? What is the team? Have you done your homework? You know, and it doesn't have to be, at least from my perspective, a name. Like, you don't just have to mention a name that I've worked with before to say like, oh, well, this is real. It could just be that I'm working with a line producer and he put together my budget. He helped me with my budget and I'm looking at it and it looks real, right? They put proper fringes in there. They assume that they're going to be putting people through as W-2 employees. They're not going to be doing 1099s, their whole crew. Like, this shows experience, you know, and also that you've done your homework and you're taking this very seriously, as opposed to like, yeah, I'm just doing this with 20 people and I'm paying them under the table and we're going to hope that this goes well. So yeah, that's a big thing for me, just to kind of validate, yeah, this could happen pretty soon.
Thanks, Ryan. Rahdi?
I would say clarity of the concept for the nonfiction film. I think for a lot of folks who come up in nonfiction in the independent space, because a lot of this grant money and soft money is financed through foundations that care about moving the needle on social issues, then people think that's the only thing that matters, but it's not, because then you get to the media arts organizations funding, and then you get to the industry funding, and that's where you have to really be able to communicate, you know, what is the story? You have to imagine, you know, it's nonfiction, so you don't know, but you have to imagine, how would this be a movie? What would it be structured like from beginning to end if you could make it up? And being able to take that risk and say, well, if I could imagine it, this is what it would be, and be able to communicate something that's a film I always tell nonfiction filmmakers, in a way, when you unlock the story, that's when you unlock the money.
Beautiful, thank you. Jenny?
I think I primarily look for does this script have roles that actors want to play? And further than that, if you're at a certain budget level that you need to hit, is it a role an actor has to play? You know, I do temperature checks with name actors, and Sam Rockwell's agent always asks me the same thing. You know, I'll tell her, like, this is the budget, it's a good script, this is the role, this is when it's shooting, and she always says, is it a role he has to play? And I kind of half the time go, maybe. I mean, he is an Oscar winner with like Oscar-winning directors, so I don't know. So to me, I look at, is that, am I gonna be helpful here? I also don't try not to take projects that I don't think are not gonna get made. So I have a pretty high standard of like what I'm gonna attach to, because, you know, it's no money when you go up front. It's very little money. So to me, it's more about, am I gonna be successful?
Thank you. Andy?
A combination of all of those things. I mean, like, look, I think the way we evaluate projects is like, you know, we look at the whole, right? Like, we look at every little thing and we kind of figure out a strategy. For us, I think exposure for us is like a big thing, right? If you've exposed it pretty widely, meaning outside the independent system to studios, to buyers like that, no one wants to be the last one invited to the party, right? So I think independent financiers and the financiers we work with, they don't want to be the last invited to the party either. They don't want to look like they're trying to save something. They want to be creatively involved. They want to be in the mix with you guys as like partners, right? So beyond all this, the nitty-gritty stuff that you look at in terms of story, financial plan, all of this stuff, I think you have to look at a project and be very careful where you send it at first, right? Because you don't want to burn reeds either. And for us, we a lot of the times get projects, again, that have been around 10 years. And it's just not worth our time at that point to keep pounding away at something that obviously hasn't panned out yet.